My scientific colleagues go to places like Greenland, the Arctic, they go to Antarctica, and they drill into the ice with hollow drill bits. It's not that extraordinary. Many of you have probably done it yourselves, drilling other things, hole saws to put locks in doors, for example. And we pull out long cylinders of ice, long ice rods. And these are made of snow. And by long tradition, it's called snow ice. And snow ice forms over the winter as snowflakes fall and are crushed down by subsequent layers. They're crushed together and trapping the little bubbles. And the little bubbles must needs be ancient atmosphere. There's nobody running around with a hypodermic needle squirting ancient atmosphere into the bubbles. And we find certain of these cylinders to have 680,000 layers. 680,000 snow winter, summer cycles. How could it be that just 4,000 years ago, all of this ice formed? Let's just run some numbers. This is some scenes from lovely Antarctic. Let's say we have 680,000 layers of snow ice and 4,000 years since the Great Flood. That would mean we'd need 170 winter, summer cycles every year for the last 4,000 years. I mean, wouldn't someone have noticed that? Wow, wouldn't someone have noticed that there's been winter, summer 170 times one year?
These guys worked at the National Ice Core Laboratory just outside of Denver. They said we go to Greenland and to the South Pole and we drill holes through the ice. Government job, you know. And we save the center part of the hole. Oh, we need more ice, that's for sure. We're running out of ice. Spend $1 billion, go to Greenland and get some. Well, they drill these holes down in the ice. They take what's called a core sample. Here's a picture of the coring machine. This thing drills down and snaps off a 6 to 10 foot section of ice and pulls it up out of the hole. And they said, we want to show you these ice cores, Mr. Hovind. Come on in the freezer. They took me in this massive freezer they've got there, about as big as this auditorium, 36 below zero in there. And they took these ice cores out of their styrofoam tubes and laid one on the table and said, now see this ice core here? I said, yep. They said, you see the rings on there? It looks like tree rings, dark and light and dark and light. I said, oh yeah, they're very clear. Interesting. They said, now Hovind, in the summer, the snow melts just a little bit on top and then it refreezes and makes clear ice, which shows up dark here on the picture. In the winter, it packs the snow and it makes white ice. So what we have here are examples of summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter, just like annual rings of a tree. I said, okay. They said, now the deepest hole we ever drilled is 10,000 feet. And we counted 135,000 annual rings. And here you are claiming the earth is 6,000 years old. Hovind, you're wrong. I said, now fellas, aren't you assuming those are annual rings? See, apparently they didn't know about the Lost Squadron, but some airplanes ran out of gas during World War II and landed in Greenland. How many have ever heard of the Lost Squadron? It's been on TV a couple times. Go to thelostsquadron.com and see all about it. Well, a rich man from Kentucky got a brilliant idea to go over there and get those airplanes off the ice. Brand new World War II airplanes sitting there on the ice. He said, hey, let's brush off the snow, gas them up, and fly them home. Well, it wasn't quite that easy. They had to find them using ground-penetrating radar because the airplanes were under 263 feet of ice in 48 years. They melted a hole down to get to one of them, a P-38, and took it apart and brought all the pieces up through the hole. They call it cold mining with a hot tube they ran water through called the gopher. They melted a hole down there, took the airplane apart, brought the pieces up through the hole, and put it back together in Middleborough, Kentucky. It flew a couple years ago for the first time in nearly 50 years. Now, when they melted down to get to the airplane, they went through ice rings. Interesting. Airplanes were in the ground for 48 years. They were 263 feet down. Those are historical scientific facts, okay? That's 5.5 feet a year worth of ice accumulating on top of those planes. You had 10,000 feet as the deepest hole they ever drilled. You divide that by 5.5 and you get 1,800 years, not 135,000. Now, deeper layers get squished, I understand. The pressure changes it to firn, F-I-R-N. I understand that. I taught her science for years. So really, 4,400 is no problem. 4,400 years is no problem to account for all the ice at the North and South Pole. Well, I went up and visited the airport where they're putting this thing together. I got to talk to the guy who helped dig it out. His name is Bob Cardin. There's his picture and his phone number right there. Call him if you don't believe me. I said, Bob, when you melted down to get to that airplane, did you go through ice rings? He said, oh yes, many hundreds of them. I said, how could there be hundreds of annual rings in 48 years? Shouldn't there be like maybe, 48? He said, annual rings? He said, those aren't annual rings. He said, that doesn't represent summer, winter, summer, winter. It represents warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold. You can get 5 of those in 1 week around here, can't you? Yeah. But here's a Scientific American article where the guy is still calling them annual layers. Now, folks, either he's confused or he's underinformed of the topic, or he's deliberately lying. He may just be ignorant, okay? I hope that's the case, because ignorance can be fixed. Stupid is forever, but ignorance can be fixed, all right? That's the difference, by the way. The guy that works with the Eskimos sent me this postcard and said, Brother Hovind, I work with the Eskimos in Alaska. He said, they've got over 40 words for snow up here, different types of snow. He said, I got 15 layers of snow on my car in 8 hours. Not 15 inches, 15 layers of snow. Those layers are not different ages, not a year apart. Same thing with the textbook when they tell the kids about the Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic. How many have ever heard of the geologic column before? We cover much more on that on video 4. The geologic column is actually the Bible for the evolutionist. It can only be found one place on planet Earth. The only place you will ever find the geologic column is in the textbooks. There is no geologic column. This guy admits it. He said, if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. I had a professor I debated one time said, oh, Hovind, you're wrong. Now, there are 26 places on planet Earth where the geologic column exists. I said, no, I'm sorry, you're wrong. There are 26 places on planet Earth where the fossils are found in the order you would like them to be. But that doesn't prove the geologic column exists in any of those places. There is no geologic column. If there was, in one place, it'd be 100 miles thick. And the obvious question would be, where's all this dirt coming from? One of the biggest lies kids face in the textbooks is about the geologic column. It's a joke. It's a hoax. It doesn't exist. But that really caused problems for the world in 1830 when it was taught. We'll get into that in a minute. Look, there's no question the Earth has layers. But if those layers are different ages, why are there no erosion marks between the layers? They all just fit tight to each other like pancakes. I mean, don't you think if that one layer sat there waiting for the next one to come on top, it'd rain once in a while in 10 million years? Just go home and get a jar of dirt and put some water in it and shake it up, folks. It'll settle out into layers for you in a few seconds. It's called hydrologic sorting. Many years ago, I was speaking in Union Center, South Dakota. Union Center is right there. It's not even on the map. And South Dakota puts everything they can find on the map just to fill in the white places. There were 40 people in the whole town. 38 of them came to church. I don't know where the other 2 were. Probably out pulling a calf, I reckon. But we had a great time. It was a wonderful little church out there in the country. The preacher said, hey, Brother Hovind, let's go down to Rapid City. They've got a museum with dinosaurs. I said, man, I like dinosaurs. Let's go. So we all drove down to Rapid City. We walked in the door, and this old fellow met us at the door, and he said, folks, I'm a guide here. Would you like me to give you a tour? We said, that would be great, sir. The first place we stopped on the tour was the geologic time scale. They've got it behind glass, all lit up. It's holy. Don't touch it, okay? We're standing there, and the guide said, now, folks, this layer of rock you're looking at right here is about 70 million years old. And it's so cool, because they always get that sanctimonious tone in their voice, you know. 70 million years old. Oh. My daughter raised her hand. She said, sir, how do you know that layer is 70 million years old? He said, that's a good question, honey. He said, we tell how old these layers are by what kinds of fossils are found in them. They're called index fossils. She said, okay. We walked around the other side. We're standing over here, and the guide said, now, folks, these bones you're looking at are about 100 million years old. My daughter raised her hand again. She said, sir, how do you know the age of those fossils? He said, well, honey, we tell the age of the fossils by which layer they come from. She said, sir, when we were standing over there, you told me you knew the age of the layers by the bones, and now you're telling me you know the age of the bones by the layers. She said, isn't that circular reasoning? I thought, wow, a chip off the old block. That guide had the strangest look on his face. It was almost as if he were thinking. He looked at my daughter. He looked at me. I wasn't about to help him. I thought, man, this is going to be good. I got to hear this. He looked back at my daughter. He said, man, you're right. That is circular reasoning. He said, I never thought of that before. That poor fellow drove 50 miles one way that night to hear me speak in Union Center, South Dakota. The crowd swelled to 39. We set up a chair in the aisle. Afterwards, he talked to me for almost an hour. He said, Hovind, is everything I believe about geology wrong? I teach this stuff at the college. I said, oh, no, man, I like geology. Are you kidding? You've learned the names of all the minerals. That's a good trick, folks. There are 1,200 minerals. Some have names about this big. I said, you've learned the hardness test, the Rockwell test, the scratch test. I said, no, sir, I like geology. I like rocks and minerals. I have a huge fossil collection, a big mineral collection. I like minerals. I said, but the part about them being different ages is all baloney. But he doesn't dare quit teaching it because he'll lose his job. See, people who don't support the evolution theory lose their job in public schools. That's the way it works. We cover more on that on video number 7. It's a carefully protected state religion. It's all based on circular reasoning. I'll show you. This textbook tells the kids on page 306 to date the date the rocks by the fossils. On the next page it says, date the fossils by the rocks. Circular reasoning. This is silly. Okay? This guy says, the intelligent layman has long suspected circular reasoning in the use of rocks to date fossils and fossils to date rocks. The geologist has never bothered to think of a good reply. This guy says, I can think of no cases of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. If they tell you they date the fossils by carbon dating or potassium argon or one of those other ones, they're wrong. That's not how it's done. Fossils are dated by which strata they come from. Strata are dated by which fossils they contain. Circular reasoning. Radiometric dating would not even be feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. This guy says, the rocks do date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. I think the cheese done fell out of his sandwich, folks, okay? If somebody charges you with circular reasoning, here's how they answer them. They say, the charge of circular reasoning in stratigraphy can be handled several ways. It can be ignored. It's not the proper concern of the public. In other words, it's none of your business how we do it. Or it can be denied by calling down the law of evolution. It can be admitted as a common practice or avoided by pragmatic reasoning. But the fact is, it's all based on circular reasoning. I like to ask the evolutionists, I'll say, fellas, your geologic column contains limestone quite a few different places. I mean, if I just handed you a piece of limestone and said, how old is it? How would you know if it's 100 million year old Jurassic limestone or 600 million year old Cambrian limestone? I mean, they're both limestone. How would you know the age of it? It's, oh, that's easy. We would tell by the index fossils. Precisely my point. This textbook shows the kids a trilobite. And it says a trilobite's a good index fossil. If you find a trilobite, it probably lived 500 to 600 million years ago. I don't think so. Somebody found a human shoe print where the guy had stepped on and smashed a trilobite. They asked geologists all over, how could a human step on a trilobite if trilobites lived 500 million years ago? One guy said, well, maybe aliens visited the planet 500 million years ago. Hey, those aliens will do it every time. Trilobites did not live millions of years ago. There could be some trilobites still alive. There certainly are isopods, which are very similar, except one-piece shell instead of 3 lobes. Otherwise, could be a descendant, a mutant, which, by the way, which is a loss of information, not a gain. This textbook shows the kids a fossil graptolite. This is the New York State fossil. It says graptolites lived 410 million years ago. Only problem is they found graptolites still alive. Now, if they're still alive, couldn't they be found in any rock layer? This one shows the kids the Devonian period. It says this is from 325 million years ago. It has lobe-finned fish. They got a short leg and then the fin. Well, this is silly. Lobe-finned fish are still very much alive today. It's called the coelacanth. And when they first found the coelacanth still alive in 1938, they said, wow, would you look at this? They survived for 325 million years. It never dawned on them one time to question the geologic column. That thought never crossed their brain. This lady wrote a book about it, A Fish Caught in Time. Yes, boys and girls, this is our own great uncle, 40 million times removed. I'm not sure I can help somebody like that. This textbook says that Cretaceous and Jurassic period are from dinosaurs that lived 70 million years ago. Oh, come on. Dinosaurs have always lived with man. We covered that on video number 3. Dinosaur blood was found inside a T-Rex bone about 10 years ago. They tried everything they could to disprove it, and they couldn't. This is dinosaur blood cells. It's not going to last 70 million years. Human hands were found fossilized in the same strata as dinosaurs were found fossilized. Textbooks say the layers are different ages. I'm sorry, that's baloney. Now, Charlie Darwin didn't like round numbers. He said the Wealdian deposits are 306,662,400 years old. How he knows is anybody's guess. But here they are telling the kids the layers are different ages, and yet all over the world, petrified trees are found, like this one, standing up, connecting different rock layers. Now, if you have a petrified tree standing up, running through multiple rock layers, I don't think it's common sense to say the layers are different ages. Not by much, anyway. I mean, how long can a dead tree stand there before it falls down? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 5,000 years? I doubt that. And yet, petrified trees in they're called polystratofossils, going through multiple layers. They're very common. Hundreds and hundreds have been found. It would only take one to prove the point. But hundreds have been found, petrified, standing up. In central Alabama, there's a large coal mine where they found all kinds of petrified trees standing up. Now, the kids have been taught for years that those 2 layers of coal, called the Mary Lee and the Blue Creek Formation, are different ages by millions of years. And yet, when you get all the fossils together, they label them sample A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. You can put it together and figure out and prove positively the Mary Lee and the Blue Creek had to form within a few weeks or months of each other. That's exactly what you'd get in a flood. We cover more on that on video number 6 about the flood, what caused the coal seams during the flood. Here's some from Cookeville, Tennessee. Petrified trees standing up, running through multiple layers. Joggins, Nova Scotia is famous for its petrified trees in the vertical position. Most of these pictures are on our website, drdino.com. We've got a piece of petrified wood in our museum running through 12 different layers of slate. And they're going to tell you in school each layer of slate represents a different season. That's 12 years. I'm sorry, that's not true. That represents movement of the water and separation of the particles by density or something like that. We get into that in video 6. So don't let them tell you the layers are different ages. Sometimes trees are found petrified upside down, running through multiple rock layers. Now we really have a problem. I've thought about this one till my brain hurts. As far as I can figure this out, the evolutionist only has 2 ways to solve this. He can say the trees stood upright for millions of years while the layers slowly formed around them. I find that one hard to believe. Or he can say the trees grew through hundreds of feet of solid rock looking for sunlight. There's a 3rd way to solve this. Maybe those trees were buried in a big flood. When Mount St. Helens blew its top, it blew thousands of trees down into Spirit Lake. Over 20,000 trees have already sunk to the bottom and are stuck in the mud at the bottom of Spirit Lake. Many thousands of them are standing up in the vertical position. And those trees are going to petrify. They're already beginning to petrify. It does not take long for things to petrify. Here's a piece of petrified firewood. I've got a piece of petrified pallet in our museum from a pallet shop that cut pieces of wood. Some kid sent me a box of petrified acorns. He said, Brother Hovind, I tried an experiment. I put these acorns in a bucket of water and forgot about them. A year later, I thought maybe they might sprout, but now they're all petrified. Would you like some for your museum? I mean, they're solid rock. Here's a petrified dog inside a tree in Georgia. They cut the tree down for firewood and said, wait, don't cut that one up. There's a dog inside. Turned to stone. Here's a petrified cowboy boot with the cowboy's legs still in it. The boot was made in the 1950s. Here's a petrified fish giving birth. Petrified hat from New Zealand. Here's a petrified pickle in our museum. I'm not kidding. The guy sent it to me. He said, Brother Hovind, we found this old house in Montana. The roof was gone. House had been empty for at least 30 years. We went down the basement. There's a bunch of jars of pickles, a pantry. But the lid to one of the jars rusted off, and inside the pickle turned to stone. Would you like it for your museum? I said, well, yeah. A petrified pickle. The jar was made between 1930 and 1960. That's the year they made those jars. I don't know when the pickle got put in there, but sometime in there. Don't let them tell you it takes millions of years. There's petrified sacks of flour found in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, from a flour mill that flooded in the 1910s, I believe. So kids, when they tell you the layers are different ages, you're being lied to. That's not true. Don't believe that. 80 to 85% of Earth's surface does not even have 3 geologic periods appearing in correct consecutive order. This guy says it becomes an overall exercise of gargantuan special pleading and imagination for the evolutionary uniformitarian paradigm to maintain there ever were geologic periods. The geologic column is a hoax. One of the biggest lies ever passed off on humanity, but the vast majority of the world believes it, even though it doesn't exist. When they started teaching that in the 1830s, people began to change their worldview away from what the Bible teaches to this new view from Charlie Lyell, the lawyer from Scotland, that each layer was a different age. This teaching really had a strong influence on a young preacher from England. There was a fellow that just graduated from Bible college to be a preacher. His name was Charles Darwin. The only degree Darwin ever got was a theology degree. And today they call him a great scientist. All he got was a theology degree. Which is not bad, but he's not a scientist. Pangea. How many have ever heard of Pangea theory before? They say all the continents used to fit together. I get asked this question every week. Hey, Hovind, do you think all the continents used to fit together? I say, well, they didn't tell you they shrank Africa nearly 40% to make them fit, did they? I bet they didn't tell you they took out all of Mexico and Central America. Hey, señor, ¿qué pasa? ¿Dónde está Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica, Guatemala? And also, they don't tell you what I think ought to be obvious to a kindergartner. Did you know if you take the water out of the oceans, there is dirt underneath? People say, do you think the continents were connected? I say, what do you mean were? They still are. Hello? It's not hollow under the oceans, you know. It's just the low places are full of water, that's all. Duh. We cover more on the Pangea theory on videotape number 6 of our series. What a dumb theory. The Earth is spinning about 1,000 miles an hour. 1,041.6 for you technical folks at the equator. But the Earth is slowing down. It actually is slowing down enough to create a problem. Every year to year and a half, they have to add a second to the clock because the Earth is slowing down. They call it a leap second. 1990, Pensacola News Journal said, we have to add a tick to the clock because Earth's rotation is slowing down. It says regular clocks use days as a measure which are going longer by 1,000th of a second or more daily as Earth's rotation slows. 1992, Astronomy magazine said, Earth's rotation is slowing down. June will be 1 second longer than normal. We will have a leap second. Leap second. Did you know we have a leap second about every year to year and a half? Because the Earth is slowing down. Now, kids, this is going to be complicated, so listen carefully. The Earth is spinning, but it is slowing down. So that means that it used to be going faster. How many can figure this out now with no help? Okay. Well, now, the Earth is only 6,000 years old. This is no problem. It was going a little faster when Adam was here. He wouldn't notice. He didn't have a watch anyway, as far as we know. But some of these guys want me to believe the Earth is billions of years old. Man, if you go back billions of years, the world was spinning real fast. Your days and nights would be pretty quick. Get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed, get up, go to bed. You never get nothing done. The centrifugal force would have been enormous. The winds would have been 5,000 miles an hour from the Coriolis effect. And you think dinosaurs lived 200 million years ago? Oh, I know what happened to them. They got blown off. No, they did not live 200 million years ago. The Sahara Desert has what's called a prevailing wind pattern. The wind almost always blows the same way. This creates a problem. The hot air blows off the desert and kills the trees next door, and that area becomes desert. The process is called desertification. Well, now, they've done quite a bit of study on Sahara. That's pretty obvious it is growing. There's just no question about that. But they said, after studying it for years, they said, you know, the Sahara Desert is probably about 4,000 years old. Okay, I have no reason to doubt that, but I do have a question. If the Sahara is only 4,000 years old, why don't we have a bigger desert someplace? Why would the biggest desert on Earth be less than 4,000 years old? Well, I have a theory about that. Now, here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God created everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. It's pretty hard to have a desert under a flood, right? So the desert couldn't start growing until the floodwater went down. So I predict, based on the Bible, the biggest desert in the world will be less than 4,400 years old. It is. Wow. Maybe the Bible's right. Did you know when they drill into the ground, sometimes they hit oil? The oil's oftentimes under incredible pressure, like 20,000 pounds per square inch. It'll come squirting up out of the ground, poof, like a big zit. 20,000 psi. Well, the guys who study this problem say, you know, the oil has some pressure simply because of the rocks on top of it. It's called the overlying weight of the rock, the overburden. That produces pressure. But the oil pressure is greater than the weight of overbearing rock. So this should have cracked the rock and equalized the pressure in less than 10,000 years. Okay, well, if all that's true, then I have a question. Why do we still have oil pressure? Actually, where did the oil come from? Well, most scientists agree, and I agree with them, that oil comes from organisms that are squished. They're changed by heat and pressure into oil. Clear back in 1970, they learned how to make oil in 30 minutes, 20 or 30 minutes in the laboratory. In 1996, they set up a factory in Australia to turn sewage sludge into oil in 30 minutes. They opened up a factory in Texas a couple years ago, can turn almost anything to oil. They're taking turkey guts and turning it into oil with heat and pressure. Check it out, Discover Magazine, May of 2003. Sinclair Gas Company has the dinosaur as their logo. They say dinosaurs turn to oil. Yes, boys and girls, these dinosaurs mellowed for 80 million years. I don't think so. I debated Jeannie Scott. She's the president of the National Center for Science Education. The National Center, big name. They got 4 or 5 people there, a little bitty storefront building, you know, but they're the National Center in Berkeley, California. She said in the debate, by the way, there's the National Center right there, little storefront building, that's it. Which is okay, but it got kind of a much bigger title than I think they ought to have. Andrew Carnegie started this whole organization purposely to keep evolution in the schools and keep creation out. That's the purpose of the National Center. Well, I debated Jeannie Scott, and she said in the debate, she said, Dr. Hovind, there are 80 separate layers of coal in the Midwest. She's right. She said, if you look at the amount of coal in the world, the entire biomass, that means all the plants of the world today, could not possibly be converted to that much fossil fuel. She's right. In other words, there's so much coal in the ground, if you took every tree and bush and blade of grass on the surface of the earth, you couldn't squish it and make all that coal. I said, Jeannie, you were right. She said, don't you see, there had to have been an enormous amount of time involved in laying down the coal seams. Oh, now right there she's wrong. You see, she's looking at today's world, which is 70% underwater, and thinking that's how the coal got there. Well, if the pre-flood world was mostly land and loads of plants, the flood would form all that coal in 1 year. But she's guilty of looking at today's world and trying to interpret the past, just like 2 Peter warned us was going to happen. In Montana and Wyoming, there's a coal mine that is 10,000 square miles of coal up to 200 feet thick. That would take a lot of trees. And sometimes in coal, human artifacts are found. This bell was found inside a lump of coal. The sole of a shoe was found inside a piece of coal. The stitching was so clear you could see the twist in the threads. This iron pot was found inside a lump of coal. Your kids are going to be told coal formed millions of years ago. No, coal formed in the flood. The Bible says there were green herbs over all the earth. Genesis 1:29. I think there were plants from pole to pole. You know, when they went down to Antarctica, they discovered frozen leaves. There are no trees in Antarctica, and yet thousands of leaves are found deposited there, 250 miles from the South Pole. Today, the Earth is 70% underwater. Only 3% of planet Earth is habitable for mankind. The rest is underwater, deserts, ice caps, or just plain cold like it is up here in Wisconsin. They say each of the layers is a different age, you know, Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archeozoic, all them Zoic boys. And they gave each layer of rock a name, like maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park, and an age, and an index fossil. This was done in 1830, way before there ever was a carbon dating or potassium argon dating or lead-208, lead-206, uranium-235, uranium-238. Didn't exist, folks. The dating technique didn't exist. They just made up these numbers out of the clear blue sky. In the early 1950s, actually the late 1940s, they invented carbon dating. We're going to explain a little bit about radiometric dating and how it's supposed to work, and then show you that it does not work, okay? The Earth's atmosphere is about 100 miles thick, and we're also protected by a magnetic field. Radiation from the sun and from the stars, mostly from the sun, goes right through that magnetic field, some of it does, and hits the atmosphere and produces carbon-14. Carbon-14 is radioactive. Normally, carbon is atomic number 6, which gives it atomic weight of 12. But this nitrogen, which is right next door to carbon, gets struck by radiation and it turns it into carbon-14. Now, carbon-14 is unstable. It is radioactive. It's always breaking apart. And you can hear it like with a Geiger counter, you know, click, 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 just like uranium, because it's decaying. They've discovered it decays at a fairly consistent rate. About half of it will decay every 5,730 years. Which means if I gave you a pile of carbon-14, 5,730 years later, half of it would turn back to nitrogen. The rest would still be carbon-14. Theoretically, it's a random event, but it could, that's probably how long it would take. During photosynthesis, plants are breathing in carbon dioxide, and this radioactive carbon is mixed in with the regular carbon. The plant doesn't seem to know or care if it's getting radioactive carbon or regular carbon. It just takes it right in. Animals eat the plants and make it part of their body. Probably during your lifetime, you have either eaten plants or you've eaten animals that have eaten plants. How many have done that before? Okay. So, you probably have radioactive carbon-14 in you. Now, theoretically, what you have in you should match whatever's in the atmosphere, about the same percentage. Because the plants are always breathing this stuff in, and the animals are always eating the plants, and we're always eating the plants and the animals, so it should pretty much stay in balance. It is assumed the ratio of radioactive carbon-14 to normal C12 in the atmosphere would be the same found in living plants and animals. That is an assumption, but it's a reasonable assumption. The atmosphere today is 0.0000765%. Not much. That's how much carbon-14 it has in it. When the plant or animal dies, it stops eating or breathing. How many knew that already? Okay. So whatever it had in it begins to decay. Since half of it will leave in 5,730 years, all you got to do is check to see how much C14 is in it, how much C14 is in the atmosphere, and if it's only got half as much, it's been dead for 5,730 years. Sounds great, but it doesn't work. In theory, it never goes to zero, but it goes from a half to a fourth to an eighth to a 16th to a 32nd to not much, okay? After 4 or 5 half-lives, you can't measure it. So if anybody ever tells you, we know the Earth is millions of years old because of carbon dating, you can rest assured they don't have a clue what they're talking about. Because if it worked, it would only work for 30 or 40 or 50,000 years maximum. They compare the amount of C14 in the object being dated with the amount currently in the atmosphere and estimate how long the object has been dead. It sounds good, but there are some assumptions that mess everything up. Okay? Assumption number 1, has the amount of C14 in the atmosphere always been the same? Has it reached equilibrium? This is an interesting problem. If I told you to fill a barrel with water, but I drilled holes on the other side of the barrel, while you're filling it, it's leaking out. At some point, it's going to be leaking at the same speed you're filling, and that point is called equilibrium. You will never fill the barrel past that point unless you plug the holes or fill faster. See, it's filling and leaking at the same time, sort of like your checkbook. You know, you put it in and it leaks out, okay? Hopefully you want to at least be at equilibrium, okay? If less than that, you're going to be in trouble eventually. See, if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall every time. Well, they say if you took a brand new planet Earth and stuck it out in the solar system, the sun would start producing carbon-14. It would start decaying also right away, and it would take about 30,000 years to reach this equilibrium point. Well, Willard Libby and others who invented carbon-14, University of Chicago in 1947 to 53, he got a Nobel Prize for it in there somewhere. He said, well, it would take 30,000 years to reach equilibrium. He said, well, we know the Earth is millions of years old. Mistake number 1. So we can ignore the equilibrium problem. Mistake number 2. The Earth's atmosphere has still not reached equilibrium. There's more C14 now than there was 10 years ago, which proves the Earth is less than 30,000 years old, which I could have told them just from reading my Bible. See, if an animal is still alive, be it plant or animal, okay, it should have about 16 clicks per minute on your Geiger counter per gram. If it's 0 years old, actually 0 years dead, If it's getting only 8 clicks per minute, then it's 5,730 years old. If it's giving you 4 clicks per minute, it's gone through 2 half-lives. It's 11,000 years old. If it's 2 clicks per minute, it's 17,000 years old. This is how they date it. So if you're getting 2.5 clicks per minute, you just find the point on your graph and draw the line over and determine the age. Sounds real simple, but it doesn't work. Living mollusk shells were carbon dated at 2,300 years old. Hello, they're still alive. Freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old. Shells from living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old. That's stupid. He's still alive, okay? I know snails are slow, but 27,000 years, he'd be dead, okay? One part of a mammoth is 29,000 years old, another part's 44,000. One part of Dima was 40,000 years old, another part was 26,000, and the wood next to it is 9,000. The lower leg of a mammoth is 15,000 years old, the skin is 21,000. 2 mammoths found side by side in Alaska, one is 16,000, one's 22,000. Which number is right? Living penguins, carbon dated 8,000 years old. 11 human skeletons, the earliest known human remains in the Western Hemisphere, were dated by accelerator mass spectrometer. All 11 dated about 5,000 radiocarbon years. Lava from a 1801 Hawaiian lava flow was 1.6 million years old. Well, hello is not even 200. Another volcano erupted in Hawaii in 1959. When they dated the lava, it was 8.5 million years old. At least potassium argon dating for that, not carbon. Mount Etna in Sicily, I climbed Mount Etna when I was over there some time ago. Erupted in 1972, 350,000 years old. Mount St. Helens built a new lava dome in 1982. They dated it. Got numbers from 350,000 to 2.8 million. It's not even 20 years old. Here's what you ought to consider about carbon dating. Samples of known age, it doesn't work. If it's a sample of unknown age, it is assumed to work. That's stupid. In the last 2 years, an absolute date has been obtained for the Gandong beds above the Trinal beds. It has the very interesting value of 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. Boy, they nailed that one right on the head, didn't they? See, back in 1770, George Buffon said the Earth is 70,000 years old. 1905, the official age of the Earth was 2 billion. When they went to the moon, they said the Earth and the moon are 3.5 billion years old. 3.5 billion, dated with potassium argon dating. Now they're telling the students it's 4.6 billion years old. Let's see, that means the Earth is getting older at the rate of 21 million years per year. That's 40 years per minute. Aging rapidly, folks. That's stupid, okay? All they do is add more time to make the theory look more reasonable. Long ago and far away. And when you prove it couldn't happen, they say, well, it was longer ago and farther away. In Glen Rose, Texas, south of Dallas, that's where Dr. Ball's museum is, south of Fort Worth, they've got a river running through town called the Paluxy River. Back in 1908, the river flooded, and it got so bad it ripped off the bottom of the river, which was solid limestone, sort of like concrete almost. It ripped off a 2-foot layer of limestone and moved it 20 miles downstream. Underneath was another layer of limestone, so it's no big deal. But that layer underneath had contained hundreds of dinosaur footprints. They actually made a state park out of it. I've got the book right here, Dinosaur Valley State Park. If you want to come take a look at some of the pictures. They chiseled out lots of the tracks because they knew erosion would tear them up over the next 20, 30 years, would destroy them. They moved a lot of the tracks to museums. They cut out big blocks of stone and moved them and set them up under dinosaur skeletons. So it looks like the dinosaur just walked there. Some of the tracks are pretty big. Here's a kid taking a bath in one. Right next to the dinosaur tracks, frequently they found human footprints. Roland Bird was in charge of the group of guys digging out the tracks, and he reported there were 15 to 20 inch long, clearly defined human footprints with the dinosaur tracks. Human tracks and dinosaur tracks together? Hundreds of dinosaur track sites have been found around the world. Finding dinosaur tracks is not that unusual. Many have been found. There's some in Holyoke, Massachusetts, some in Connecticut. They found Colorado on Red Rock Amphitheater's got a bunch of dinosaur tracks. But to find human tracks with them is pretty unusual. In 1884, a geologist named Flint was working for the Peabody Museum at Harvard University down in Nicaragua. He discovered a layer containing fossilized human tracks 16 to 24 feet below the surface. He described the tracks in 1884 and said these footprints are from 1/2 to 3 inches in depth, and none exceeded 18 inches. You can read the whole description for yourself on our website about the tracks found in Nicaragua. Human tracks are found. But now museums are real careful about mentioning anything about this because that might support the creation view. So stuff kind of gets squelched or hidden on this topic now. But human tracks with dinosaur tracks have been found a few times. There's some pictures here if you want to see a trail of human tracks crossing a trail of dinosaur tracks. This is the Taylor Trail from Glen Rose, Texas. I've been there 4 times, talked to many folks who studied it. Carl Ball lives there, studied it avidly. People say, how can you have human tracks together? Well, one of the best human tracks still had the dermal ridges, I mean, like the fingerprints on the toes. You could see them. They were extremely clear for the first few months. And once it gets exposed, you know, it starts to dry out and weather, and pretty soon it starts to become a little less clear, and then pretty soon it's nothing but an oval. There's a good book about it called Texas Tracks and Artifacts if you want to get more information on the human and dinosaur tracks together. We sell castings of one of the human tracks. It's a size 24. Check our catalog. You can get one of those for hang on your wall in your office. That'll start a conversation. You can steer that conversation toward creation. We had a kid with a size 18 tried to fill up our 24 track, couldn't quite do it. They chiseled out some of the rock ledges and said, we think the tracks are fake, you know, some of the skeptics did. When they removed the rock, they found more tracks underneath the undisturbed limestone. And they said, okay, who made these tracks anyway, under the rock here? They sawed one of the tracks across the toes. Looking at it endways, you could see there were depressions where the toes had squeezed the mud down, distorting the lamination lines. These are not carved in, they're not erosion marks, they're compression prints, quite obviously. There's much more on that on the website omniology.com. The man's stride between steps was about 6 or 7 feet. I would rip my britches every time trying to do that. How do you get human tracks and dinosaur tracks together? Well, one preacher, he's assistant pastor in Arizona, he wrote me a letter. He said, Brother Hovind, I grew up in Glen Rose, Texas. He said, I went on an excavation with Dr. Carl Ball. We were out there digging up these footprints, and Nova was there to film the dig. He said, there was an evolutionist who had been arguing with Dr. Ball the entire time. Nova didn't film much of the tracks or the dig, but they did interview the evolutionist. He told them he had not seen anything there to disprove evolution. What he didn't tell the camera was he had refused to even turn around and look at the tracks we were working on. When they found some tracks, they would say, sir, would you video this? No, I don't want to see it. He wouldn't even look at it. He stood with his back to the tracks and the dig while making the statements. Nova knew the man had not looked at the tracks, but did not report that, nor did they give Dr. Ball equal airtime to respond. You see, folks, evolution is not part of science. It's a religion, and they defend their worldview with religious fervor and zeal. If it was real science, it would be open to all observations, but they totally, purposely discredit anything that goes against their theory. One guy said, well, maybe there was a dinosaur with feet like a human. That explains these tracks here. Oh, you never know. Could have been, you know. This guy said, finding dinosaur and human footprints together would counter evidence that humans evolved long after dinosaurs. I agree. And would back up the claim that all species, including man, were created at one time. I agree. It sure would back up that claim. They don't want that claim to get out. This guy said, creationists have stated humans and dinosaurs were contemporaries in time. Were this momentous statement true, the names of its discoverers would thunder down the corridors of time as individuals who made one of the most outstanding discoveries of the 20th century. Well, I didn't discover it, but you can put my name on there. I believe that to be true. Yeah. There's more books about footprints in stone if you want to get more on this topic. I've heard the arguments on both sides. I still believe it is very true. Even a petrified hammer was found. Now, some people say, oh, they didn't have iron before the flood. Oh, they sure did. You better read your Bible. Tubal-Cain was an artificer in brass and iron. That's before the flood. This thing was found in solid rock, supposed to be 600 million years old. Beautifully carved little trinket there. I was in Idaho preaching, and I went to Nampa, Idaho, to the museum. Years ago, somebody was drilling a well in Idaho, and they brought up this little doll from 300 feet down. In rock, supposed to be 12 million years old. I held it in my hand, little doll, obviously man-made. Batteries were found in Iraq from areas supposed to be 2,000 years old. Some people say, oh, they didn't have electricity before that. Oh, yeah, they did. The Egyptians knew about electricity. Here's a hieroglyphic showing the Egyptians using electricity, apparently to mummify a snake or something. I think ancient man was real smart. Workers digging for copper, they found a copper arrowhead and human bones in a vein of silver. They're digging for silver and found human bones and an arrowhead. J.D. Whitney, the state geologist of California back in 1880, published a lengthy review of advanced stone tools found in California gold mines. The implements included spear points, mortars, and pestles. They were found deep in mine shafts underneath thick, undisturbed layers of lava. Here they are digging underneath a mountain, finding human tools in rock supposed to be, 55 million years old. W.H. Holmes of the Smithsonian, one of the most vocal critics of the California finds, wrote, "Perhaps if Professor Whitney had fully appreciated the story of human evolution as it is understood today, he would have hesitated to announce the conclusions." What's he saying? If this professor knew how important our theory was, he wouldn't have told anybody what he found. Anybody else getting that interpretation out of there? That's exactly what he's saying. The Smithsonian is responsible for hiding all sorts of things that go against the evolution theory. In the 1950s, Thomas Lee of the National Museum of Canada found advanced stone tools in glacial deposits, supposed to be 65,000 to 125,000 years old. The director of the museum was fired for refusing to fire the discoverer. If you discover something that goes against our theory, you're fired. That's not science. How many of you have ever gone into a cave and the guide said, don't touch the formations, they take millions of years to form? They all have the same story, right? You go to Carlsbad, they'll say, yep, it took 250 million years to these formations in here. They say tiny drops of water slowly build these formations. One guy said it takes 1,000 years to grow from 1/10 of a centimeter to 10 centimeters, up to 2.5 inches. Maximum be 2.5 inches per 1,000 years. Well, I don't think so. Here are some 50-inch long stalactites growing under the Lincoln Memorial, built 1922. Here's a bat covered up with flowstone before it could rot. It doesn't take millions of years for that stuff to form. Here's 2-inch stalactites growing off a refrigeration shed in Pensacola, Florida. There's a building in Indiana, it's only 40 years old. The basement is full of huge flowstone formations in 40 years from water dripping through the limestone. There's a mine in Australia that was closed down for 55 years. When they opened it up to just check to see how it's doing, there were huge cave formations that formed in 55 years. There are 2 people inside that circle to give you an idea how big this is. There's a pipe that was dripping water up at Herbert Field near Pensacola at Eglin Air Force Base. Made a 13-inch stalactite in 7 years. Underneath on the ground was a stalagmite. Everybody kept tripping on it, and so they broke it off and gave it to me. It's in my museum. Stalagmite formed in 7 years. Here's a parking garage in Texas. Brand new parking garage, built in 1997. It was making stalagmites on students' cars parking under it. So they put up a drip pan to catch the water. A guy in Wyoming had a hot mineral spring on his property in Thermopolis, Wyoming. And so he stuck a pipe in the ground back in 1903. The water came out the top of the pipe, ran down the sides. They called it the teepee fountain, kind of a natural fountain. Everybody thought, wow, that's cute. He's got a fountain in his yard. Well, slowly over the years, the water, as it ran down the side of the pipe, evaporated, some of it, leaving behind mineral deposits. How many have seen those mineral deposits in your sink, okay? Well, the guy died, and they left the pipe sticking in the yard. It's now been there for 100 years. Here it is, about 6 years ago. That would take some lime away to scrub that clean, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Sure would. It does not take millions of years to form those things. That's 100 years worth. The guy down the street started one later. It's not quite as big. But folks, it doesn't take a long time. Did you know at the current rate of erosion, the continents are going to erode flat in 14 million years? We have mudslides, landslides, of course, erosion, abrasion, exfoliation. Does the ground ever fall up? It's always down, isn't it? Sedimentary rock's always on its way down anyway. You might get igneous rock coming up, volcanoes. Did you know, they're telling us we got fossils in sedimentary rock that are 300 times older than the current erosion rate would allow for. All you got to do is fly out west. 2 days ago, I flew back from Grand Canyon, flew out west. You just look out the window of the plane, folks. It looks like there's erosion marks every place down there in places that hardly ever rain. We cover Grand Canyon in video 4 also. If you think that river made that canyon, you need to watch video number 4. Erosion marks all over this world are evidence of massive flooding on this planet. And we could spend all day on that. We cover more in video 6. A couple more things and we'll quit. The oldest writings in the world are about 5,000 years old. Well, that's interesting. Why would the oldest writings be 5,000 years old? Why does the Chinese calendar say this is the year 4704 right now? They think they started with Noah. The Chinese calendar, or the Hebrew calendar, said this is the year 5764. They think they started with Adam with their calendar. Don't trust the Egyptian calendar, by the way. That one's greatly exaggerated. Get the book Evolution Cruncher, a 900-page book for $5. Go to our website. It's a great book with lots of good stuff on evolution. Why would the oldest reliable historical records be less than 6,000 years old? I have a theory about that. I think the Bible is absolutely correct. I think the evidence for a young earth is overwhelming. The evidence for an old earth is minimal. And like the coins in the box, you have to go by the limiting factors. Each one of the evidences for a young earth would have to be overcome. Each single one would stand independently. Students are never shown the idea, though, that the earth might be young. I think I know why. This isn't really a science book anymore. It's a book about evolution. Somebody wants to make sure your kids believe that theory because it's part of a much bigger long-range plan toward a new world order. There's a reason for this. The founding fathers who started this country said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain rights. Where do rights come from? Well, they come from the Creator. And if you get a bunch of people together who believe they have rights that come from the Creator, those people do not make good slaves. They will actually throw the tea in the harbor and start a big war. They will. Now, if you want to have a one-world government, a new world order like some of these lunatics would like to have, and like is prophesied in the Bible, they're going to get it. You can't have people believing in creation. So they've been working really hard for the last 100 years to take over the school system where they only teach this evolution theory which says rights come from government. Rights don't come from the Creator because there is no Creator.